Hey everyone, thanks for joining today's fireside chat presented by Assessment Systems. My name is Patrick Ochoa, our President of Strategic Partnerships. I'm joined today from our folks here at Monitor EDU. I'd like to present Katie Hofer. Katie, why don't you say hi to the group today?
Hey everybody, so excited to be here.
Perfect. Glad you were able to join our fireside chat today. Today, we're going to be talking about remote oral and practical assessments, 3 tips for effective delivery. And I really appreciate Katie joining from the Monitor EDU team because from their side, they are one of the industry experts on this topic. So figured it'd be great to get their perspective and share some tips and tricks and a couple insights that have made for some successful remote oral exams for them. But some quick promotional plugs here before we get started and diving into the fun, juicy topics of practical assessments. For folks who don't know who assessment systems are as an organization, essentially we are an end-to-end assessment platform where our fundamental goal is to make your organization's assessment process more effective and efficient. In addition, the candidate journey to make it effective and streamlined as possible, whether it's online item banking, online test delivery, a candidate management system, psychometric services, or remote proctoring. The solutions over here at Assessment Systems will have your organizational needs covered. Katie, why don't you tell the audience today a little bit about Monitor EDU and what y'all do in terms of remote proctoring?
Thanks, Patrick. Yep, so at Monitor EDU, we're real people, live proctors who help organizations run and make sure their exam content stays secure. And we make sure that candidates and testers are following specific protocols to make sure that they are able to take their exams in the comfort of their own home or a place that they feel comfortable with. At Monitor EDU, we help proctor thousands of exams a year, and we really truly focus on customer service and making the testers feel really welcomed and being able to give them the flexibility to take their exam as needed, and as long as supporting our clients throughout the journey as well too.
Perfect. Appreciate that background on a little bit about Monitor EDU. And I believe, how long has it been since Assessment Systems and Monitor EDU have been working together? Probably a little over about 5 years now, hasn't it been?
It has been 5 years, and it's been a great partnership this whole entire time.
Absolutely. It's crazy how the time flies by. But now we're going to shift gears and just dive right into it. First and foremost, what is an oral and practical assessment? Well, unlike your traditional written exams, an oral or practical exam really allows the candidate to display the knowledge and the critical thinking behind the study materials that they've learned for that particular assessment. It's essentially doing what they're going to be doing in their everyday remote practice. And this is just to display to the organizing body that they actually know what the heck they're doing, which is very important because you want to make sure that we are certifying people who actually have the skills and the knowledge to do the work that they're doing. And during the pandemic, these practical exams really took off remotely. They've traditionally been done in person, which is great and all, but during the pandemic, we needed to find a solution. And I know the team over at Monitor EDU built out a model that really has worked well. And with the combination of Assessment Systems test delivery platform, it's really a huge end-to-end process that works phenomenal. And then also with oral and practical exams, it seems like planning from not only the examiner point of view, but from mapping out the candidate's journey is really, really critical. Katie, from Monitor EDU side, anything that you want to add that covers what an oral practical exam is, or maybe you have some firsthand experiences that you might want to share from your own personal background?
Definitely. So it's been a very interesting journey working with different clients to see how we can help make remote practical exams secure. That's the biggest concern that we get is is the exam content safe? Are the candidates truly answering the questions themselves? AI is a huge problem that we're seeing in a lot in the online testing industry. So what processes we have in place to show that this method can be successful for proctoring? Another thing that's been really interesting with hosting oral exams is our 2-camera solution. So that's something that is different that we do. We have that webcam view, and then we also do have that secondary device, which is traditionally a mobile or an iPad, that allows the exam proctor to see the environment, actually know what's happening in that room while the candidate is presenting all the knowledge they've worked so hard in clinical trials and practices for.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So why do oral exams matter, Katie, from your perspective? Why do you think they're really as important as the audience and our clients like to think that they are?
Definitely. Honestly, from my personal experience, I do believe oral exams are one of the most high stake assessments that we work with in the industry, because a lot of these candidates, they have gone to institutions that have been paying fees for. They've had to do practical training, residency hours. They've put in so much time and effort to be able to prove that they have these specific skill sets to make a difference in everyone's everyday lives. The most common oral exams that we see are for doctor candidates. So it's important and crucial that we have a protocol and an environment set up to be able to demonstrate those skills and those knowledge. And especially today, with making the exams remote, we're able to reach even more people that are able to show these skills that they've been practicing and honing in over the last couple of years.
Absolutely appreciate that feedback. And then when I talk to clients out there across the globe, one thing that the remote exams really is attractive for them is they get to have a more expanded audience in terms of candidates being able to take their assessments. Because traditionally, and you can tell me from some of the work that you've done in the past too, is when candidates would have to go to a hotel or one general location to do these particular oral exams. Now they can just be anywhere across the globe where they've got a stable internet connection and a good webcam and a mobile phone, at least using the Monitor EDU solution. And it really just gives that access so that these individuals have the ability to complete their assessments, have the ability to move forward in their professional career. And then also from the organization, have to imagine it reduces a significant cost. And then of course for the environmental side out there, just to reduce of all the environmental footprint that not only the candidate, but the organization has to take on.
No, I agree. You hit the nail on the head perfectly with that too. And I think just making the exams accessible too is something that's so important as we really start to work with all of these professionals.
Absolutely. And then as we as we work with more and more organization, I think there's a real common theme in terms of pitfalls that we run into within the industry. And then first and foremost, at least from my perspective that I see, is just organizations keep trying to keep doing the same old procedures that have worked well for them throughout the years, which is great. Why reinvent the wheel if it's not broken for you as an organization? But sometimes taking those in-person processes and procedures don't really translate well online. And then, of course, another thing with moving remotely rather than in person, sometimes the examiners get left in the dark. It feels like the examiner training is an area that can be improved on within several organizations. And then last but not least, another pitfall that I see all the time is just the lack of communication, especially in real time when the exams are going on. I've just heard so many horror stories from our clients where they just try to get a hold of the vendor when something's going on, and it's just crickets. But a week later, once there's no issues going on in real time, they get reached out to by that individual. So it's just a real pain point that a lot of folks are looking to solve. And I know with our solution, a lot of those issues are addressed. But Katie, any other pitfalls that come to mind from your perspective?
Definitely. I think some of the biggest things that we are constantly communicating with our clients is trust. Like, trust that we know the process, trust that we are the professionals in the room, trust that we know how to take something that was happening in person for so many years and bring it online and hear all their concerns. And that communication piece in getting everything set up is just so important. We thrive on our live escalation process, with that real time proctoring, this real time delivery that they just need to be able to take a couple steps back and maybe think about things from a different angle, or how we can deliver these exams, and kind of realize that that's why we're reaching out to a vendor like Assessment Systems and Monitor EDU, because they know what they're doing and they've administered so many of these exams that they can trust that we will get the job done correctly.
Absolutely. We're not here to check the box saying, yeah, we can do it. We're here to make sure that your candidates are able to complete their journey. Because at the end of the day, both of our organizations are here to really empower the candidate to complete their assessment journey, to get certified or recertified. So we're just a small little piece of that puzzle for them. So as you mentioned, we got to make sure the technology works, not only for the candidates, but for just the organization in general. But now that we've talked about some doom and gloom, let's talk about some helpful tips that organizations can use to really improve their remote oral exam and practical process. And one thing that always comes to mind to me is really just mapping out that entire assessment experience. What's it going to look like from not only the candidate's point of view? What does it look like from the examiner's point of view? What does it look like from the proctor's point of view? What does it look like from the administrator's point of view on exam day? What do each one of these roles do on exam day in case there's an escalation that takes place? What processes do we follow? I've seen organizations where the most successful oral exam deliveries is when they have this entire process mapped out from start to finish, and making sure that they've got all the procedures and protocols mapped out. Kaiti, from your perspective, anything that you'd like to share from this tips perspective?
Yeah, I honestly think the biggest tip that's helpful is giving everybody that training and that practice experience before the exams happen. What about technology? How well do candidates, examiners, administrators, like how well do they know the platform that they plan on hosting these exams? Being prepared for what if situations, what if a candidate loses internet? What happens if an examiner loses internet? Do you have backups in place? What does that protocol look like? I think just having a protocol and a clear map from start to finish, like you said, will help any exam administration run smoothly.
Absolutely. And then I think one other tidbit to take in mind is all the prep work that is needed leading up to these assessments. Just working with your vendors to ensure that the communication process from start to finish is going on in real time, as well as just making sure that communication is constant and consistent.
Exactly. And when to start it. I think that's another good tip is how early do you start working on these processes? If you have exams that are going to be happening in a year from now, 6 months, where do you even begin?
Yeah, absolutely. And then from that perspective, what time frame would you recommend to an organization out there to engage with their vendor for really repping for the next oral assessment? I know right now for folks who are going through fall assessments, it's a little too late for us to help. But say someone who is looking for assessments or oral or practical assessments in the spring or the summer, when would be a good time to engage with their vendor?
Definitely. So from my experience, I would love 10 months out, but I know that can't always happen, right? So sometimes we have to be able to move a little bit quicker. From there, once you reach out to your vendor and you can secure your exam dates, I think 6 months is a really good place to go ahead and start the work because you have to prep all of the communications, the schedules, and there's so many pieces that are involved. That 6 month period really truly does help. Now, we've administered exams with about 12 weeks notice as well too, and it can be done, but it can be a little bit stressful because there's just so many moving parts. So the more time, the better is always in my perspective, but having a vendor that you trust and that you're able to set the time aside to have weekly meetings, to have monthly check-ins, to make sure that everybody is on the same page, that the information is being communicated to everybody involved, we can definitely make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good advice out there, and it just sounds like as long as the organization has a plan and a time frame in mind, seems like y'all would be able to meet any of those timelines laid out there. Now, diving into tip two, that's always recommended: offer practice or dry run sessions. So you kind of led up to this in one of your previous responses, but man, what has been a huge success for some of our partners are the practice or the dry run sessions leading up to the day of their certification. I think first and foremost, this gives not only the candidates the ability to test out their equipment, make sure that their exam space and their environment is set up to par and satisfaction of the proctoring company, because I would assume there's times where candidates try to take their exam in their car in their coffee shop, and that's not an ideal place to take their assessments. So doing these dry runs with the proctor really eliminates any unnecessary reasons why a candidate can't complete their exam leading up to assessment day. And then in addition, these practice runs from the examiner perspective is probably really important as well, because it allows them to test out their technology, make sure the equipment works out well. And then one thing that I know from personal experience is maybe sometimes folks try to take their practical or oral assessment in the workplace, where firewalls end up blocking the webcam or the screen sharing technology. That just throws a whole monkey wrench into exam day. So doing these practice runs really just eliminates all those concerns. And at least for one of our partners, I've seen a huge drastic improvement from exam day cancellations and rescheduling. So it's just resulted in higher completion rates for their oral exams. Kaiti, from your perspective and the proctor's perspective, how important are these practice and dry run sessions?
Oh, I say dry runs, and we call them technology checks. That's the number one thing to guarantee that an exam administration is going to be successful because, like you said, it also just helps reduce anxiety and stress for both the candidates and the examiners. You know, sometimes we're really lucky and we get seasoned examiners, they know exactly what to expect. But for a brand new examiner that's newer to the field, that still has really good experience and wealth and knowledge and wants to take charge and be a part more of their own personal organizations they're a part of, it's a great leadership opportunity. So we want to make sure everybody in the room feels comfortable, because if the examiners feel stressed, the candidates are going to feel stressed. So making sure that all of their devices are working. And I think the firewall thing is a huge important thing that you touched on. If a candidate or even examiner is using an institution-based computer, sometimes they're not compatible with, depending on whatever platform you plan on hosting the exams in. And if you don't have another device available, then that board's short an examiner. And if that happens multiple times, the exams won't be able to start and we have to reschedule. And we don't want to waste anybody's time or money. We want to make sure that we stay on schedule for these planned examinations that we've spent weeks preparing for.
Absolutely. That's very, very important point that you brought up there. And then really, yeah, just ensuring that the candidates and the examiners are able to just complete this assessment, because it's a very important process for the candidate, but not only the organization, to certify these individuals going through their assessment process. And then also doing these dry runs really helps the examiners get kind of any nerves and anxieties out of the way before they drive it or jump into exam day. I remember one examiner during these dry runs was just lounging around in his living room and just in a t-shirt, not really taking the session very seriously. And the chair had to jump in and be like, no, this is a practice session to ensure that you're able to give your candidates the best experience possible. And then on exam day, rest assured that examiner was there all buttoned up in their office, no interruptions taking place. So I'm sure, Katie, you have an example or two that probably comes to mind similar to that.
Oh, definitely. Just prepping everything. We tell candidates, I'm like, in your room, put up a do not disturb sign. Put your phone on D&D, making sure nobody's going to call you. Let everybody know this is what you're doing to be able to make sure that you can be successful and take your exam with limited distractions and everything, because we've seen it all and we've navigated it all. But that's why people love using our services, because we can be able to also tweak things on the fly too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then sometimes during these practice runs, some organizations have proctors instruct candidates to put sheets up into the background covering bookshelves. Do you mind talking a little bit about that? Why that would be done during a high stakes assessment and what that importance would be?
Definitely. Room setup is key, and we make candidate videos talking about why we're asking them to do certain things. Because if you don't know anything about remote assessments or the industry, you're kind of like, why do I have to cover up a bookshelf? What's the risk? And we do that for security purposes and making sure that the exam content is safe, because these organizations are trusting us with their item banks. And we want to make sure that, it's not going to get leaked in any way possible. So we want to make sure that the room is as empty as possible. So if you have a bookshelf that's directly behind you in view of that computer, we want to make sure there's no cameras or recording devices in there. So with that secondary device, we get a really good room scan, of all four walls, under the desk, the ceiling, and we look at everything. And we just want to minimize any potential risks for that exam environment to make sure that there's going to be no issues, and that the client can also be rest assured that we're doing our checks and balances to make sure we're doing everything to keep their exam safe. And that's another reason why we love that external view, to see what the candidates' behaviors are, because our exam proctors were looking at a lot of different things to make sure that no interesting behavior is happening. So we want to make sure that the candidate seems to be focused onto the exam, that they're not getting any aid from anybody else. And these practice runs just really help the candidate know what to expect, and to kind of just see what their normal testing environment is going to look like on exam day.
Perfect. Yeah, that's very helpful insights because some of our partners have always asked, well, why does that sheet have to come up? And so just all that prep work that your team does really is just very helpful for the process. So appreciate you providing that insights. Now, as we move on to tip number 3, I think, well, all 3 of these are important, but this one could be one of the most important things to do, especially on exam day. It's provide real-time support. And one of the things that I've found out there that is really successful on exam day is create what I like to call a command center. Now, it's nothing scary. It's no grand console out there or anything, but it's just a live meeting essentially that has the vendors and then the testing organization on a call. So if issues come up, that you're able to communicate in real time. And at least I've learned from past experiences, this really reduces the number of issues that take place on exam day, and as well as streamlines communication. I've seen some organizations do things through chat. I've seen things done through Skype, team meetings, but having that real time meeting where the entities can talk with one another really helps eliminate any confusion and just streamline the process from start to finish. And also, it helps reduce cancellations, which is the most important part, because at the end of the day, we're here to ensure that candidates can take their assessment. So, Katie, I know from the proctor's point of view, I've heard great things about the command center in terms of just being able to escalate things to the clients. Why don't you share some things from your perspective?
No, definitely. So when exams were in person, couple of years ago, what they would do is they would book out a hotel conference and all the different conference rooms, and members of the board would run back and forth to all these individual rooms to check to make sure that the examiners are good, if the candidate showed up, if the projector isn't broken from presenting the exam content and the cases, all of this extra footwork. So we were just trying to think of a way, how can we make that for a virtual setting? And this command center is a great way to do it. We'll usually have one set up with the boards, and the proctors are also in one as well too. And then management team will be able to be in both to help escalate things live, just to help solve problems much quicker, to let them know if examiners are experiencing any issues, if there's questions. And especially for chairman of the boards is what we've learned. They love to go in and check on the progress of things so they can just have an ear on what's happening in real time. It's much better than picking up the cell phone and trying to call 20 different examiners. That takes so much time. And then your exams end up becoming delayed. And if your exam is delayed, most of the time you have another set of candidates that are going to be testing in 2-hour chunks. So then your day gets even longer because you're just trying to figure out how to get all the information and the knowledge to everybody. And depending on the examiners, not all of them are the most tech savvy. So the chat feature I've noticed is really hard. They do so much better when we can just unmute yourself, turn your camera on and say, hey, let's have a quick conversation about this and figure out how we can solve this solution that's happening right now. And we resolve them so much faster. Something that maybe takes 20 minutes, we can get resolved in less than 5. And we really pride ourselves on that open communication with all of the vendors and clients that we work with.
Yeah, being able to resolve those issues in much more efficient time, I think, is just very important and critical for these exams. As you mentioned, any delay that starts in the first session carries on to the last session. And so if you have more delays throughout the day, that just kind of compounds things and makes things much longer for just all parties involved. So I think it's great that having that command center, not only for the proctors, but for just the testing organization and then the vendors, it's just very, very powerful piece that allows communication and just reduction in issues. So perfect. Some key takeaways, I think, from our conversation so far. While it's true that remote exams can be secure and scalable, it's only true if we have strong processes and procedures in place to ensure that delivery and completion takes place. And then, of course, we got to prioritize the preparation and just the communication, not only to the candidates, but as well as the examiner and then the organization. Just in life, communication is key for resolving any and all issues. And then, of course, not treating technology as a barrier, where it should just be a tool for us along this journey. Kaiti, any other takeaways from your perspective that you can think of?
No, those are the 3 most important, and just being open with the partners that you're working with, being willing to accept each other's feedback and concerns, and just really being a problem-solving team is also, I think, another helpful tip.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I enjoy about the partnership between Monitor EDU and Assessment Systems. When we work with clients, we're not trying to force them into our procedures and protocols. We really take the time to figure out, okay, what's your organizational journey for the candidates as well as an exam administrator, and how can we adapt our process to your process? So it's very important that that communication piece is there for all parties for success. And then while you're listening to today's fireside chat, you're probably asking yourself a couple different things. So these are just some good discussion questions that you can take back to your organization, or if you talk to your vendors while prepping for next year, ask them these questions to ensure that you're getting the best support out there. Kaiti, any other questions that you might think of that would be a good one to ask to a vendor out there?
I think the only other question that I would maybe ask is, what's a good timeline? Making sure that we're meeting goals and deadlines for every step of the oral exam process. And that includes the psychometric part as well, too. That often is a piece that isn't talked about at the jump because we're trying to get everything organized. But what's that timeline look like to get results out to candidates is also really important, too.
Absolutely. Always important to get those results out to the candidates because, at the end of the day, it's about them and they want to make sure that they've passed. So just having that in a timely manner and just communicating that process with them is very important. Well, appreciate everyone listening to today's fireside chat on oral and practical assessments, 3 tips to an effective delivery. Appreciate Katie Hofer from Monitor EDU joining our conversation today. And if you ever wanted to get in touch with us, have any burning questions, and you want more information, those email addresses on your screen are the best way to get a hold of us. And appreciate everyone's time today. And thanks again, Katie, for joining us on today's fireside chat.
Thanks so much for having me.
Perfect.